We're so glad you could join us today. We're going to be streaming live for about half the day. So if you need the schedule at any time, you can go to sasteraiday.com and view the full agenda there. We've got an awesome half day of content for you guys. We've got Salesforce, Google Cloud, DeepMind, Laravel, Oracel, a lot of AI-powered go-to-market leaders. And a lot of their founders actually and leaders of revenue are going to be talking to you guys throughout the day. But we thought Jason and I would kick it off and just share our thoughts kind of on where we're at now in our agent journey. We'll try and leave some time for Q&A, so drop them into the chat or Q&A wherever you want. Thanks for tuning in. We'll try and make this super tactical. So yeah, with that, let me make sure you guys can see this. All right, cool. So yeah, to kick things off for today, we wanted to talk a little bit about where we're at today with all of our agents, and maybe more importantly, now that some of you have deployed at least one agent and are looking at doing multiple agents kind of in the path that we've been, what does that really take in reality and fruition to do this multi-agent management? What does that all mean? So just for quick context, I think a lot of you have seen this now, but just as a refresher, we have about 20 plus agents now. We've vibe coded about 12 apps. They've been used, almost 1 million times, which is kind of crazy. I think we'll probably cross the 1 million mark before the next AI day. And so that's a lot of usage, right? And so a lot of the things you'll see us talking about today, we also have on saster.ai/agents. So you can always go there at any time and see some of either the third-party tools or the in-house ones that we've built and kind of play around with them there. Okay. So what have we learned now that we're about, almost, depending on how you count, either 8 months or a year into this journey? It's funny. I was looking up when you joined Delphi, Jason. I think it was December of 24, but I didn't get on it until February, March timeframe. Does that sound right?
It does, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so depending on where you count, fully deployed though, I say 8 months with multiple agents in tow. So we started with Delphi. If you guys haven't tried it, you can go to saster.com. It's the Jason bubble there. You can talk to his clone. So we added that, and then we quickly learned, it was doing kind of advice and support, and we spent a lot of time training it. We've talked about it on other pieces of content here, but that was our first foray into an agent. And I think support and sales I see now is the most two common use cases of where people deploy their first agents. So super common thing to do there. And then we added an outbound AI SDRs. We added multiple of those. Now that's not necessarily, I think, a path that everyone needs to take. You could probably deploy an outbound AI SDR agent and do it well. And then secondly, I think we also looked across our sales funnel of where do we want to be in terms of what else we want to deploy and go to market. And so we quickly added, multiple outbound AI SDRs, an inbound AI SDR agent, and then multiple agents across go to market, and then a few custom vibe coded apps that some of which we're using now internally, but mostly are external facing with the pitch deck valuation and things like that. Anything to add there, Jason?
No, it's a good summary. A lot of folks have followed the journey, but we did push the limit here, as some folks know, after SaaStr AI Annual last year in May. Basically, anyone that left our tiny team, we replaced them with an agent. So we've been on this journey. We've deployed. You can see our whole list. We've deployed a bunch of startups. Are also one of the leaders on Agentforce, and Amelia will touch on that. We'll keep chatting about that because I think it's just helpful for you guys to see these apps in production. Yep. And then we'll get into it. And then we started off vibe coding for fun, but as Amelia will go, when we really recommend you buy something, don't build. The 90-10 rule Amelia will have here. But the latest thing we've added, which we've talked here, is we built our own VP of marketing. And we'll talk about why in a minute.
Yeah. So that's kind of been our journey. Again, it's not necessarily that everybody needs to be at, the number of agents we are. For a lot of reasons, we try different agents, right? Part of the SaaStr community and ecosystem is we are trying different agents. We have different partners. And so we have also a underlying need to just try a bunch of different things. I also am just wanting to try different agents and see what works and what doesn't. And so there's that inherent, but that's not necessarily what you need to do for your business, it may not make sense to be at the same level and number of agents we are. But okay, so 8 months later, just kind of like highlight results is, does all this work? I think I've seen kind of, now that we're, maybe a year/8 months into this journey, I'm starting to see a little bit more like skepticism, honestly, weirdly, on LinkedIn. I don't know what you're seeing, Jason, on X. But I see some people becoming a little bit disenchanted with AI agents. And I see a little skepticism. So does this work? I think for us, we have now 8 months in, 4.8 million and counting in additional pipeline source via agents. And I'll talk about why it's additional. And then about half of that, so 2.4 million, is closed won revenue that was, first touch source from an agent across go to market. So a lot of good things there as like a proof point. Additionally, it's, we've seen some underlying things also improve via the agent. So our deal volume has more than doubled, right? I count a lot of that towards, and credit a lot of that towards the agents working, 24/7, 365. They can always answer a question. They can always book a meeting. They can always reach back out to you. Now, sometimes, the humans here, like me, David, Jason, have to take the meeting. So sometimes we're limited by our human capacities, but I credit that to the agents working, year round, all the clock now. Our win rate has nearly doubled. I think that's just in the nature of the agents, especially when it comes to folks that are inbounding, and also in how it's doing outbound, just having a lot more context, right? It's a lot better context. It's a lot better outreach in some cases. But then essentially for us, like across me and David specifically in sales, like it helps us with our conversations because we already know what this person has said to the agent. We can see the exact conversation they're having. We can see if they're on the website. We can literally see what else their company has been doing with our agents. And we use that in the meetings, right? So it saves a lot of time. It's also a lot more qualified by the time we get on that call. And so I think a lot of that has to do with some of the nurturing there. And I think more importantly too, in those stats, like it did not cannibalize our other inbound revenue sources. These have just been augmented by our agent. And then another thing I like to remind folks too is like, it's not that we dropped a bunch of stuff either when we deploy these agents, right? I think a lot of folks now will be like, well, okay, if I just get an outbound AI SDR, then maybe I don't need any human SDRs. And maybe that's true, right? We between David and I, we do some outbound ourselves, so we don't really have a human SDR per se. But I think there's a lot of cases in which you might still need both. One, because we do personally respond as humans to each message that our AI agents produce. And so there's a lot of, time needed there that I don't necessarily like the AI autopilot responses. I still think it's better to come from a person who actually knows the business. And then I think too, in that too, I think, a lot of this has been augmented by our agents. So, in helping us book, again, more meetings, helping us understand the leads a little bit better. Again, we did not drop the other things we're doing, right? We still send marketing emails. We still do outbound. We still send gifts to people. Like we still invite people to come to SaaS. Or like all the things we used to do before with the agents. Like now we can do them a little better, but we're still doing them. And so I think that might be surprising to some folks, but just know I don't think it will cannibalize anything if you do it right. But I also think it can definitely augment versus, you don't need to go as extreme as we have to necessarily replace. We've done that and it's worked, but you may see that doing a mix of both kind of works. Okay. So cool. But here's maybe the honest truth that you may not see on LinkedIn or X. And that is that we maintain these apps every day. Like literally, even this morning before getting on AI day, I'm like checking our agents. And I think the important thing here is like the agents and the humans have to rapidly evolve and change constantly. Like it's such a mind share killer for myself, for Jason. Like we're in these agents, I think 15 to 20 hours a week each. Like that's each, not like between two of us, that's each of us, constantly like iterating with our agents, constantly saying, what are they outputting, checking the responses, making sure it doesn't hallucinate, making sure, it's talking to folks the way we want it to talk to people, making sure it's adding value, making sure it's not degrading, right? Sometimes you see these agents degrade over time. And so I think the The important thing here is like it is kind of a real killer. It does take a lot of time. I don't think you can replace the time of managing. We've just seen the time shift. Like the time we used to spend managing slightly more people on our team, we now spend that same amount of time, if not more, managing the agents. But it's just a lot different, right? Like there's no people drama really, but the agents just work at a much higher capacity and higher scale than a human being, that it's hard to eventually keep up with them. And I put this here in bold. I've been trying for a long time for the last few months to keep up with my agents, and then I realized it was futile because I could never do it. But I try and keep up as best as I can. And in that, what I truly mean is, anytime we get a response, we have a system that it'll Slack us from like any of our agents. So whenever there's an interaction or agent is having a conversation with somebody and we want to reply, and again, we like to reply ourselves, it sends us a Slack, and we do try and respond to those people literally instantaneously, if not in real time. Sometimes we are asleep, and so we respond to them as first thing in the morning. But I've realized I can't keep up with my agents. They're smarter than me. Jason, anything on your time here?
It's good. I'll tell you, just one nuanced learning actually from this week. So I was meeting last night with the CEO of we're already in the next generation of AI go-to-market agents, that's already got millions of revenue, and is publicly launching in a few weeks, but they already have millions of revenue. And I've known them for a long time, but I asked what the secret sauce was. And the secret sauce was they do everything. They do the onboarding, they do the tagging, they get the first campaigns running, they do everything. And they do it almost to such a fault that some of the customers think it's too easy and don't even realize the energy that's going into it if they haven't deployed an agent yet. And the learning from that is just if you haven't deployed many agents or any for real, you got to have an honest conversation, not with someone in sales that doesn't know how the product works or use it themselves, with a forward deploy engineer, with a leader, and find out what is it going to take to be successful up front, the first 14 and 30 days and every day thereafter. And then you got to do it or it will fail.
Yep.
And meet with the best of them. And if you don't know your FTE, if you don't know the answers to these questions, and you're spending any material amount of money on an agent, you're wasting your energy. And so it will be interesting to see where it goes this year. A lot of the agents we use are pushing down market to be more self-service. So far, that doesn't work. So far, I will say for the most part, agents that require deep training cannot be self-trained. It will come. Agents are getting so much better. That's frontier one. But wait and see, be skeptical. If you buy a cheap tool that says it's self-trained, make sure it works. And the time. If you buy a more complicated tool, like we're talking about, just talk with someone senior enough on deployment, not again, of someone trying to sell you something that doesn't know, and be honest about what it's going to take. Otherwise it's like going to the doctor and getting a prescription for medicine and never taking it. It's not going to work. It's literally like that for an agent, right? But this was the first one I saw that could do like the type of stuff Amelia and I are talking about, but without you doing any work. But it's because they have a huge human team. They call them forward deployed AEs in the beginning, and then other folks take it off. But that's an extreme case. I haven't seen any other app like this that can just do it with not consistent training and work every single day. Every single day.
Yep. All right, there's some good questions in the chat that we're actually going to get to in the next couple slides, but I'll try and address them there. So yeah, you can keep asking in the chat as we go. Yeah, we've kind of hit this, but yeah, we do spend a lot of time per week actively managing all of our agents. Just, I think to Jason's point, be prepared, right? It is, again, I think I see too many folks who they see the really good stats and they get, even our stats are, fairly good, and they get a little like mesmerized by them, thinking, okay, it's AI, I can just prompt it and it'll do it fairly quickly. I'll say too, like most of these agents have some sort of prompting in them, but they're not necessarily all built via a prompt, right? Like, don't think about it the same way you think about putting a prompt into OpenAI or Claude. It's not going to function the same way. There's a lot of there is some prompting in each of these third-party tools, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to figure out what works, put that into, their prompt builder in whatever format they have. and refine it from there. And then there's usually additional steps other than a prompt. So I think some of the tools we've seen are kind of getting to that point. Maybe they'll get there like by the time we're at SaaStr Annual, or maybe right after in like the second half of the year. But most of them are not just prompt builders. So I think that's another thing to just bear in mind. Like it's not, if you're used to kind of like this easy path that Claude and Chat and OpenAI have, kind of proprietary put out there, like they're not all like that. They're not all that easy. Now, I will say you can use things like Chat and Claude to make your prompts better. I do that all the time. Like I'll put whatever context I'm putting into our agents, I'll run it through Claude, I'll run it through ChatGPT and see what I suggest to make it better. Sometimes I'll take or leave the suggestion. Sometimes it's not, the AI doesn't know your business the same way you do sometimes. And so I think that's just another thing to be prepared for. So how did we get to this? I think this will address some of the questions as well. Yeah, how did we get to these results of 4.8 million and counting in additional revenue, 2.4 in close one, so about half that, and then also we've now crossed the 60K mark in how many emails and interactions our AI emails have had just in the sales funnel, right? That's not even counting the almost close to 1 million we've had in our proprietary interactions with our vibe coded apps, but that's a lot right there, right? So
Can we go back for one slide? Just I
yeah,
know you've got questions, Amelia. Then
yeah,
thank you. You're going to explain how this works, and given how tiny we are, it's pretty impressive numbers. But if I had to summarize all of this, and then challenge me if I'm wrong, because you're doing the real work, right? I think some of the key here is not that all these emails were the best emails that have ever been sent in the history of mankind. I know you think they're great. I actually just think they're okay. I don't think they're bad. I think they're better than most of the outbound emails I'm going to get during this day, during AI day. The ones we send are better, but they're not the best I've ever. They're not something you could
right.
spend an hour crafting. I think the number one key, and that's why the 60,000 key is cool. We are touching folks, lapsed folks, folks we forgot to talk to, folks we don't talk to enough more often. We are connecting with more people more often, not spam, right? But we couldn't do 60,000 high quality emails manually or even with old school outreach tools. We just couldn't do it. Right. So I think the key to this, tell me if you're wrong, and then we'll be quiet. I think it's just more high quality, pretty good interactions.
Yep.
That's the thing. We're getting scale. And that's why what I think when I think about everything we've learned, and you've done most of the work, Amelia, if I had to advise people that are earlier on their journey, find something in your go-to-market motion that just isn't getting done or is getting done at a very mediocre level.
Yep.
Then put an agent. Don't try to replace what's working well. Do that as your 10th agent or your 20th. Like literally, we're such a tiny team. We just weren't reaching out to enough people in our base, in our activated base. And so that's the low hanging fruit for us. We just could not do, sure. And you could put something in a dated outreach sales loft cadence, but that don't work. Right. But we never would have done this otherwise. So find that low hanging fruit, the stuff in your doing that you're just not getting to, the customers that are too small, the customers that take too long to respond and your team doesn't want to do, the customers that have low everyone's that have lower scores, right? But they still have intent, but no one wants to call them back. Do those ones for whatever your low hanging fruit is, because then even if you get some yield, it's magical.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really good questions. I want to try and address here as we go through like the framework and kind of what we're doing. So, I think again, a little bit of a misconception here, related to some of what the chatter is the formula for us is to copy your best human. Like as you're deploying, maybe you've already deployed one agent, maybe you're deploying your next agent. To Jason's point, right? Do something that you could either get a lot of scale out of by adding an agent and do pretty good. There's just some things like the agents can't / shouldn't do. Like obviously we love agent, like I love our agents. I use a lot of them. I just added the AI VP of marketing. We'll show you guys. But there are some things I'm like, the agent would just suck at that. So I'm just not going to do it. Like, it's just like, there are some things I still need humans to do. Like a lot of the production stuff we're doing for SaaStr Annual, I'm like, I still need a human to do that, dude. Like the agent is not there yet. But what we also mean by copy your human is, if you're going to add AI agents at scale to help you scale, right? Just on scaling more emails, more meetings, more clicks, more volume, figure out what works first. I see too many people who, okay, they want to automatically give an AI SDR to their SDRs And I'm like, okay, well, are those SDRs new? Did they just join? One, I don't think it's a good idea to give it to every single SDR. I think there's a lot of reasons that would get you into trouble fairly quickly in terms of workflows. But I also think like if you don't know what works first, I don't get this mindset of like, oh, it didn't work, but I'm just going to add AI and it'll magically work now. Like, no, if it didn't work or wasn't working before AI, it's not going to magically work now. And somebody asked me this question yesterday when I was doing a Salesforce webinar, like, okay, what if I'm a super early stage startup? And I don't know what works. And I was like, well, do you have any customers? They're like, yeah, we have like, 10 paying customers. I'm like, well, go ask your customers why they bought you. Like everybody has at least a few customers, or maybe if you're super early stage and you've got a few folks on a trial, just go ask them, like figure out what worked, figure out what got them in to your product and is getting them hands-on product. Figure out what works first, right? We had so much data that we ran through before we put it into any of our agents on what was working, right? The best email copy for doing outbound, the best responses of how we should follow up with inbounds, the best contacts and verbiage about SaaStr, about SaaStr's events, about sponsoring SaaStr. Like we went through all this data, we went through all this context, we flagged everything that was the best of everything before we put it into any agents, any AI, etc. So, train the agent on what works best. I think I see too many people now falling into this trap of they want to add AI into something new. And sometimes you can, and it will work to some degree. But I think if you do it and you train it on the best of everything, it will work that much better, right? It will get you to pretty good, to Jason's point. Like it'll get you to pretty good emails. They still may not be the best on planet Earth, but I think it'll put you over that bar of pretty good versus like crappy AI emails that we've all seen, or even crappy human emails that we've all seen. So yeah, that's my conviction on it. But yeah, I think, you have to train it on the best of everything. And if you don't know what that is yet, I would take that time, take a week, figure that out before, you deploy your first or next agent. And then see where that gets you. I feel like you'll have a better output because we are constantly iterating our agents now to make sure they have the best of everything and that they know everything that we know, like as we know it, right? So like as we get speakers for SaaStr, we have new things that we're doing, or now we've got like lounges and stuff, or like new things in our sales process. Like I'm constantly making sure the agent knows all this so that it can talk to that. Okay. So I want to address some of the questions on the chat of like, some of folks are asking about evaluation tools, like what's our processes. And then this is the 90-10 rule that Jason came up with, but I really do agree with, and I think it's a good one, which is, buy 90% of your AI stack, and I'll talk about the evaluation process we've done in a second, and only build the 10% where I think there's no vendor that can do this well. And it's either a P1 priority, or as you'll see in like our AI VPM, I built that agent because it was a commodity. Like it was something where even with all of our agents now, I was like, I still have so much data from SaaStr internally that I want to act on. And I want to deploy this agent in a way that maybe I don't need it to run everything automatically. So it's a very specific use case. But that was where I kind of built that. And that's where that kind of fostered in from, right? It's like, okay, I had all this data. I wanted to do something that was more internal facing, not necessarily external, like a lot of our go-to-market agents are. And so in that case, it made sense to build. I'd say for a lot of things, it doesn't make sense to build, right? Like if you guys listen to the podcast, Kyle and Jason did, I think we put it up like last week or something. Kyle, who's the CRO of Owner, talks about how, he's also kind of roughly followed the 90-10 rule of, he's bought a lot of third-party agents. He's made them work. And then he hired somebody who was I think it was like a former founder or something, right, Jason? To like build a proprietary in-house tool. And that's like one extreme, right? But like even that 10% that he's building in-house, like he hired somebody who like was a CEO, was an engineer, like knew how to code. Like I think he was like a CEO of like an LLM company or something, like knew all this crazy stuff and like could build a proprietary like internal agent. But again, for a lot of things, it probably won't make sense to do. I think too, just to address some of the questions on the chat of like what's been our criteria. And we've talked about it a little bit before, but when you're evaluating these tools for the 90% you want to buy, I think the important thing is to One, again, I don't know why I think in the age of AI, people sometimes will throw things away because they're like, oh, there's this shiny new object. Like I literally asked all of these AI tools that we now use and deploy for help. I was like, I need one, I'm gonna need help, like I'm gonna need an FD. And two, let me talk to people who've used this. Like I think I see too often folks are like, okay, it's an AI tool. And so I'm not going to ask for a customer reference. Like, ask for a customer reference. I do these all the time now. Like, I try to make them as short as possible now because, we do these webinars and stuff too. But I do these all the time now. Like, Marshall from Mango Mint, Kyle from Owner. Like, we do these all the time. Like, Philippe from Persona. We do these all the time now. People ask us constantly for, like, a customer reference. Like, like ask them for a customer reference, and if you can, ask them for one like in your vertical. See what they say to you, right? Like if they push back, maybe don't use that vendor. Like most of these folks have at least one customer that's slightly like your. If they don't have one in your vertical, maybe you can give them a pass on that. But like at least talk to a customer and then see how much they will help you, right? I think a lot of these tools, to their credit for the third-party tools we do use now, have been helping us along the way, right? Like there's some of this like we've learned from just now deploying so many agents, but some of it was because they put an FDE on our success team, right? Like Salesforce put an FDE on our success team. Artisan is unique in that, anytime I have an issue or I have an idea, I just email the CEO or the head of product. Qualified. There's an FDE on our success team. Replit, we have an FDE on our success team. Like, there's just so many cases here where if you ask them for that, they should give you some level of that service, right? Like, to make it work because they should want your business and they should want you to be successful. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to have an FDE like every week. Like now I meet with them a lot less often than getting started, right? But you should ask them at the very start, at the very least, to have some FDE time at the start. Jason, anything else on criteria for evaluating third-party tools?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit
I will
about
say one thing on
yeah, go
third-party
ahead.
tools. I know this is versions of things we've said since the beginning. When you're talking to a vendor, if it doesn't feel right, don't buy it.
Yeah.
It should feel right. It should feel. A lot of folks flame me a little bit when I say a lot of agents should almost get you going for free, right? And a lot of agents can't do that. There's economic reasons, there's
Yeah.
headcount limits. People can't really train you and deploy you for free. But if you look at like the 20 VC that I did with Harry and Rory when Mark Benioff came on, it was interesting when he said he wished he could. He said he
Yeah.
can't at Salesforce, but he wished he had enough FDEs that everyone could be in production on Agentforce before they had to pay. It's not practical, but the best ones take you as far down that journey in the age of AI as they can. They're proud of their products. They'll show it to you. If something doesn't smell right, if it doesn't feel right, if you don't think it's going to work, it won't work. Buy another one, even if the brand's less good, even if it's scrappier, even if whatever. If your spidey sense says this agent isn't going to work, don't buy it.
Yep. I agree. I think too, like, yeah, the point you made on the free trial. Like, a lot of agents cannot set you up for free. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
In the evaluation. So yeah, we threw down for these agents.
It makes it
Uh,
hard. It makes it hard.
it
You
makes
have
it
to take
harder.
some
Yeah.
risk. It is interesting. I want to say it is interesting that when you look at the prosumer AI tools that we highlight, all the Reeves and the Gammas, they're lucky because you can get so much value for free. Even forget about $29 a month or $99. Actually, the free products are great. Like try those tools. The problem with AI GTM tools is like even if they want to do it, they can't do it, right? So you've got to take some risk, but maybe not later in the year. But don't do it if it doesn't feel right.
Yep. All right, cool. There's a few other things I want to get to, and then I want to make sure we can answer some of the questions in the chat. So all right, that's our kind of like build versus buy rule. And then once you get to this point in the process, like something I wanted to address, which is also the title of our talk today, was what does that look like in reality once you get into multiple agents, right? And I'm going to say something today that it's not so simple. Don't let that scare you. Don't let that like frighten you off of doing more than one agent. And maybe you stick to one and it works really well, and that's fine. Like not everybody needs to be I think, in a multi-agent management journey. But just know that if you're in that journey today, for ourselves, and what I've heard from some others is it's kind of all band-aided together. um, there's like there's kind of a big reason folks like, Salesforce are having like a big renaissance, like because a lot of these third-party tools we use, for instance, and for example, like push back to Salesforce, or we push all the data back to Salesforce with like a Zap, or whatever, or some of them have it native that they can push records and update records back to Salesforce. And so a lot of the time right now, it looks like, all of our third-party tools, whether we're APIing into them or not, or using things like a Zapier, then we have all of our internal data and our vibe coded apps, right? We're pushing all that back into things like, Claude, Zapier, back into things like Salesforce as our like system of record, just to keep all the records up to date somewhere central. But that's not native now, right? For now, that's not native at this moment, and so it takes a lot of webhooks. If you haven't heard this word, you'll probably learn it fast. We have so many webhooks in our Zapier account. I can't even like count them, right? Like we have so many webhooks just firing all the time to like push things back. But I'm pushing them again as into one kind of thing. And for now, that's like Salesforce, because it can ingest all this data and take all the context for our agents. But and not to say, like, you could say, okay, I don't maybe need that data everywhere all at once. But I like to have it. I like to, I like to build the context of the agents from one agent to another. And so to let it build on itself, we use a lot of webhooks. We use Zapier. I know N8N is having like a renaissance now because it's kind of the same thing, but just built in the age of AI. But whatever one you use, right? You're gonna see quickly, and I've got a screenshot of it. You end up with a lot of like different hooks and kind of like hodgepodging things together. But I think that's just for now, right? I don't think that's a problem for always. I think it's just a problem for now, in the first half of 2026, to have it kind of web hooked into things that you need to make sure you can control the flow of what your agents are doing and where that data is ultimately pushing back to and pulling from. I do think you should pick one source of truth, right, at the end of the day, to store some of this, and then build further context for your agents. We picked Salesforce, so you could pick HubSpot or something else. I think also to get used to your agents talking to each other on their own. It happens. Our agents talk to one another. It's fine. Get used to also, as a human, like talking to your agents. It is kind of a weird thing to at first get used to, and then you'll get used to it. And then also get used to, for now, copy pasting context. Like we do a lot of context sharing between our agents. Like, yeah, some of this pushes to Salesforce, but sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't want it to push through that flow. I'm just going to copy paste something in this context from one agent and then put in the other agent, like the way that it understands context. And so, again, that's not necessarily the simplest or the cleanest path of multi-agent management. And so I just wanted to be for real about that in today's world, that's what our reality looks like. But that's also because we use a lot of specialized tools. Like there are obviously, I know there's like all-in-one agent builders out there. Some of them are coming to SaaS through this May. But for us, like, I like to use the specialized tools. I just still find that the output is a little bit better. Like I like to use the best of everything in each agent versus like an all-in-one tool that can build multiple agents. For us, it works better. For you, you might see success in using an all-in-one tool. But for, if I could build different agents across the board. But for us, since we use like very specialized third-party agents, this is like the reality we live in. But you might not live in it if you pick like one system that can do multiple agents. You might just have to manage one from there. And if you're like, okay, I'll trade off maybe some of the quality for quality of life in managing all the agents, then it might make sense to use an all-in-one. All right, so what do I mean by this in reality? Right, this is a screenshot of one. This is a screenshot of one of my Zaps. I'll explain to you what's slightly happening here, because this is I also wanted to show people like a go-to-market flow they could copy. Maybe not necessarily at the same like degree or scale, but this is one you could feasibly copy / iterate on for yourselves, right? Once you get to multiple agents. So you'll see it's catching a webhook. I think this webhook is SaaStr annual, if I remember which one I screenshotted. I think this one is SaaS Annual. It's catching a webhook because there's like a, there's a lot of forms on our website, and we vibe coded the website, and so it's got a webhook when you fill out the form. And so, anyways, it's catching this. Basically, a webhook is a listening tool. If you don't know what a webhook, like it's listening to say, okay, in this case, when you submit a form, the webhook is going to catch it anytime it has a submission and then tell me what to do with that hook, right? So it's basically capturing that data. So it's catching the hook. It's porting that submission one to a Google Sheet because I'm crazy and I just like backups of everything also in Google Sheets. Like again, you'll see, like you can literally see in this flow, it's going to Salesforce, but I also just sometimes I need a quick Google Sheet. Sometimes it's just nice. So it's pushing to Google Sheets. You'll see it's pushing to Salesforce. So you could do this on contact or lead. It also depends on how, like, we're in the flow where we have Agentforce, and so it's ours is triggered off contacts. You can trigger yours off leads. Ours is triggered off contacts, and so it's creating a contact in Salesforce. It's adding a contact to a campaign. Now in number 4, I circled it because I said, we can pick when it adds a contact to campaign if we want to send it to Agentforce already in the app, right? Because I have certain campaign triggers that say, okay, when they're added to this campaign, trigger the agent to turn on. So again, you don't necessarily need to do that if you're not ready for that yet, but it's something you could do here feasibly, easily, and do it a little bit more automated, right? Then, it's going to find those records of the company. This is a little misleading because it sounds simple, but it's finding the company records, right? So since this is the contact level contact that it's created, and triggering to Agentforce potentially, now it's going to find records of, okay, basically I'm asking Salesforce to see what is this company on the account level, because we use account level contact records. What has this company done with us? And so I want it to find those records of what that company has done with us. And then, I want it to get the record attachments. If you use Clay, you can use it here in a very kind of fun way to say, okay, if I already have a table in Clay, you can have it like summarize for you, and then also like look at LinkedIn and say, okay, what else is this person actually also doing on LinkedIn? What are they doing? What are they posting on social media, for example? So again, you can get more context. You can skip this step if you're like not into using a Clay table, but that's a fun way you could do it there. And then you can send a Slack channel message to send you all this context of like, okay, here's the here's the contact that I just added to the campaign. Here's the account information about it. Here's the Clay context about it, and then I'll send you a Slack about it. And then if you really want to, you could do things like make a gamma, like if you wanted to make either a landing page or a presentation for this person to send in their email about, let's say how to use gamma at SaaStr or whatever, like how to use whatever your company is for SaaStr. You could do a super complex flow like that, have it make you a draft presentation or landing page to send to you. And then, in Gmail, you could create a draft, ultimately send to this person if you want to do it that way. Again, this is just a sample. Go-to-market flow. You can see I didn't like fully set up my Clay table because I was speeding through this. But again, this is a good sample go-to-market flow. You'll see it's like, it's got agents kind of layered in it. There's like an Agentforce layer in it. There's a, if you consider a Clay an agent, there's a Clay agent in there. This one pushes to Gmail, but if you have an AI SDR email platform, you might want it to push to that platform. But all that I think is just important to see as an example.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, Amelia, I didn't mean to. I thought you were showing us Clay itself. I misunderstood.
Oh, no.
Okay, sorry. Never mind.
That's okay. On this next one, so I wanted to actually just to transition a little bit cleaner, and then I want to get into our AI VPN before we run out of time. In this multi-agent management sample flow, right? Again, this is just a sample flow of how you can feasibly kind of manage agents, which right now for us is somewhat messy, but it looks a lot like these Zapier flows. It's a lot of Zapier to Salesforce, to other things, to APIs, to whatever. And so yours may or may not look like this. I think a lot of times folks will be like, oh, you guys have 20 agents. Like, who are you using as your MCP? I'm like, we don't have one. Like, we don't have a true, like, I don't consider this Zapier or Salesforce thing a real MCP. I consider it a MCP light. But like it's not like if you truly look up what an MCP is, it's like it's not a true MCP. Like yes, like the context is sharing back and forth, and you can kind of get there on Zapier and Salesforce, but I call it light MCP in air quotes, because it's not really an MCP. And so many people have been asking me that lately because they've seen, all of our content or our agents are like, yeah, what do you recommend I use for my MCP? I'm like, I'm not using one truly. Like this is my MCP. It's a lot of human work. And so, again, this may not be your use case, but this is how we've done it. Okay, I just want to deep dive into two quick things because I feel like there are a few related questions to it. So I have a few deep dive slides on the AI SDR and then a few deep dives on our AI VPM that I'll just quickly touch on. And then if you guys like this content, I can go fully, I don't know, I could do more questions at another time on another Wednesday. That's not AI day. But yeah, on a quick deep dive, I think things to keep in mind if you're, because a lot of you in the chat seem to be rolling out like your first AI SDR now. I think a few tips and tricks, just agnostic of any tool that you use. I feel like this is good. Hopefully good advice across the board, regardless of what tool you're using, which is one, to treat each outbound segment dynamically. And what I mean by that is like even across our, multiple agents we have for AI go-to-market, I don't do, like I see people do one campaign for like 10,000 leads. I'm like, no, I max my campaign to like 100, 500. Like, I want each campaign, each sub agent to be highly customized, highly trained to the exact segment that it's going after. Not like a broad, hey, have you heard about SaaStr? Like, no, I want to say, okay, these are my outbound segments. I put a chart here on the right that I made for our outbound AI SDR funnel. Hopefully it's helpful. But I treat each of these dynamically and I train each sub agent dynamically on each of these things so that the output, to Jason's earlier point, is pretty good, right? Again, maybe it's not great, but at least it's pretty good because everything is tailored. The audience is hyper segmented. The messaging is hyper segmented. The training is hyper segmented. Hyper segmentation in the age of AI with these agents is your friend. Like, don't spray and pray, please. Like, don't do that with your agents. I see a lot of people do that. That's how you get the bad emails on the AI SDRs. Another way to think about it too is to not think about it in the human ways of segmentation, right? Like a lot of times, classic outbound would be, okay, I'm going to do it on the geo of where they're based. I'm going to do it on their title. I'm going to do it on their role. You can see on my chart, none of that exists here. Like I'm not doing any of that super high level, almost artificial segmenting. We do it hyper segmented. And the reason we do this is to, as I bolded it here, give your agent context, right? If you're already used to using chat and Claude, what you're doing with those agents every day is talking to it, giving it context, telling it about your business. That's the same thing you have to do for these AI go-to-market SDR agents. You have to give your agent context, and the more context you give it, the better the result will be. And so that's why I hyper segment everything, list, messaging, targeting, etc., all hyper segmented to the AI SDRs, and that's across all of our AI SDR agents, right? You have to give your agent context for it to understand who are you trying to reach out to, what are their specific pain points that your problem and your tool can solve, and then I'm going to use, my classic AI of I can scrape the internet, see what their company is doing, and relate it back to them. And so you'll see in my outbound AI SDR funnel, none of this is like cold leads, and none of it is like geo or title or location. And I think too, this is a good list. I don't know how long this list is, 12 things. Like for most of you, start here. Like start here with your AI SDRs. Too many folks I see now are doing AI SDRs. I'm just going to let it loose on cold outbound because that's what our human SDRs don't want to do. I understand your human SDRs don't want to do cold outbound to people who don't know you, but neither does your AI agent because your AI agent does not have context for why you should be reaching out to this person. So same rules apply here. In outbound AI SDRs, start with the hot people, the people on your website. A lot of these AI agent tools can de-anonymize some of your website traffic to email them. People who have inbounded to you. If you have like abandoned carts or trials or you have event leads, start with all the hot people. Do the people who like, was a customer, maybe they changed jobs. Do current customers. Like we do this all the time. I'm like, I email people who like bought a ticket for London to come to SaaStr Annual in May in SF. Like, and I email sponsors that are like current customers to be like, hey, we added a bunch of new stuff. I think too many folks kind of skip using AI for expansion, but it's a great way to do it. If you have recent marketing leads because you're doing something like a webinar like this, or you've gotten ebooks or gated content, or you spent some money on some sponsored media and you got some leads, put those people onto the agent. Like leads we never followed up with that we famously gave to Agent Force. Again, the list goes on. You could see what I mean, hopefully here. Like there's so many hyper segments you can't give your agent before you give it a quote unquote like cold lead that knows nothing about you, that you should start here. And a lot of the reasons why you should start here is not only will it give your agent context, it will give your human team context on what works and what doesn't. So that by the time maybe you exhaust this list, I still haven't exhausted this list after 8 months, but maybe you start to dwindle down this list because you don't have as many contexts. Then you can start to do, okay, then you can start to do the AI truly cold outbound to folks who maybe don't know you. But at that point, you're using what worked. Again, this all goes back to what works, right? Like at that point, you know how to train your AI agent. You kind of know what's worked for these audiences. Then you can make a very informed guess on what would work for a truly cold lead. All right, hopefully that's helpful. I think the other quick thing just across the board, and then I'll go into our AI VPM that we built and try and do some quick questions is, AI is great because it can ingest in everything, right? We have it, again, ingest the best of everything, your best case studies, your best everything, right? But also tell it what you can't do. And I think this is a super important nuance that I've only learned after 8 months now. I used to just be like, okay, here's the best of everything, super good, stay in these boundaries. And then over time, because the agents are so self-gratifying, it's trying to beat itself, right? It's like, hey, Amelia, I did pretty good. And so now I'm going to start to maybe either make stuff up or try and beat myself with my opens, clicks, meetings. And I'm going to start to say things that maybe you didn't put into the context of the agent. And so I quickly learned a couple months in, actually, that once you start to do this at scale, it's maybe just as important to tell your AI agents what you can't do and what you can't do. Like I have now told it, okay, we don't do that, or we don't do this, or we don't do that. We don't offer people like a speaking slot. Like, yeah, we have speakers at SaaStr, but a lot of people apply to speak. Like send them to, the content committee submission form. Like do that instead. So I think that's just an important nuance I've learned over time. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys to know now. Hopefully earlier in your journey than I kind of learned it the hard way because it sent some emails it shouldn't have of things that like we didn't do. And I realized it was because I didn't tell it that we couldn't do those things, right? Like it was just ambitious, like in the way that maybe a human SDR would be like, oh, I don't know, I think we could do that. Or, oh, I think that's on the roadmap. Classic, right? And so the AI agent did a little bit of that. And so I think it's important to now to say, okay, here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. Okay. This is a little bit on the context, but I want to go through. I'm going to upload these slides for everyone. So to SaaStr.com. So don't sweat it. I'll also send it to you. We still reply to everything. Maybe just the last tidbit on AI SDR agents is, if you have bad foundations, and what I mean by that is bad context, that's where you'll see bad emails, right? Bad context equals bad emails. Honestly, this bad email I put on here, I actually think a human wrote, to be honest. It's written in a way that I actually don't think AI wrote it, but it was written in a way where like, they're just bad. Like these are truly bad. But I have seen AI SDR emails that are of this quality. I do think these are too human emails because this person didn't actually know where I worked, and I was like, I think AI would have gotten right where I work. So I think a human wrote that because that seems like a very basic mistake that an AI would not make. So I think that one's a little funny, but anyways, yeah. So this is one where like, again, Oh, I guess I didn't put the screenshot of what. Sorry, I meant to add another screenshot where they got the company that I worked for wrong, and I was like, "That's not an AI, that's a human." But I'll add it, and then I'll send the slides. But this other one, I was like, okay, again, this person wrote this. I'm pretty sure they wrote this as a human. Maybe I'm wrong, but they just did it, based on again things I never segment for in an AI SDR. They did it based on geo of like where the office is in for SaaStr. They did it based on my role at SaaStr, but clearly, again, I think a human wrote this, did not look anything up because they wanted me to use their tool where I literally mentioned that tool on this call. So I was like, wow, like at least reference that or like be acknowledgeable that like I'm already using a different AI SDR. That would have like, told me that at least you listened to something or your LLM listened to something I did that knew that I used this product. But like just saying like, oh, hey, how are you thinking about using, what are your priorities for 2026? I'm like, dude, this is this is a bad email. So bad foundations, bad context equals bad emails. But also, there's still plenty. Oh, here's the other one. Yeah, this is the other one that somebody sent me. That was, yeah, again, I think a human wrote this, not a person, because they got the company wrong. And I think an AI would get the company right. But clearly I'm on this webinar talking about SaaStr, so I don't work at Forrester. And never have I ever worked at Forrester. So I don't think I think a human wrote this and just copy pasted. And again, not an AI because AI, I think 100% of the time, or maybe 99.9% of the time, our AI agents know where you work. Like it's pretty, like maybe if I had worked there previously, I would give it a pass, but never ever worked there, so I don't give that one a pass. All right, in the last few minutes, our newest AI agent that we built and why we built it, and then we could do a follow up to this because 5 minutes will not do it justice. But we did not find a viable third-party marketing agent that could do more than content, right? A lot of the marketing tools out there for true go-to-market do a lot of content-related activities. The real problem we had was orchestration. Based on data, based on already having other agents, based on having, proprietary agents, whatever. Like I had a need to build an agent, and I also knew we had a track record where like anytime I try to onboard an actual human with all this data, they get overwhelmed, right? And so I was like, okay, what can I do now, knowing what I know now 8 months in, to really capitalize on getting an agent to work that could push us, keep us on track. And then ultimately what our AI VPM does is actually tell me what to do. So um
Just like most CMOs.
I know,
They
but
don't actually do the work. They just tell everybody what to do. That's the dream job.
that's the dream job. But the difference on my agent is at least it uses data to give me what to do,
I
right?
see.
It's
Not just
not
what
just
they did,
making
not just what they did 5 years ago at their last role.
yeah,
I see.
not just like, hey, I used this playbook at my last company. I'm going to do it here and bring in an agency and like a bunch of people. At least my agent was like honest about, hey, here's the data. Here's where I think you're falling short. Here's where you should double down. Here's where you should spend more. Here's where you should hire a person. Like it literally gave me all this output, which was quite nice. So yeah, that's a little funny. That's a good comparison. So this is a quick slide on how we did it. I took a bunch of data from our agents, from our third-party tools, from internal data that we've had over not all of our data, just some, because it's a lot. So I cherry picked kind of some of the best data because that I wanted it to action on. I looked at our Zapier workflows. I looked at Salesforce. I took all of it. I pushed it into Claude. Just for purposes of this. And then I took what I did in Claude and I pushed it into Replit just so I can make it into a website that the rest of the team could access. Because I was like, okay, obviously my Claude is for me. And there's not like a good, maybe for good reasons, there's not good team sharing on like specific chats. And so I pushed into Replit so I could make websites to share with Jason and David and then like some of our production team at SaaStr. So we built our own. We nicknamed it 10K for a lot of reasons. But at the end of the day, how I built this custom agent was I already had something in mind of what I wanted it to do. And so in that, I had a very clear goal in mind of like, I wanted to get us to the first 10,000 attendees for SaaStr annual in May, and the first 10 million of revenue for this year. So it gave it very clear goals when I built this agent. I gave it very related, like context and data that related just to those two goals and those two things. And basically, what the architecture was it used a lot of Claude Opus, right, which is like kind of the I will say I had to upgrade to Max to do this because my pro account ran out of memory. And it did take me a weekend. This was over a weekend I did this. I had to upgrade to Max, which now I love. But it at one point it was like, I was on the pro plan. It was like, you're out of memory. Please wait until 3. Please wait until 7. I was like, okay, I'm just going to upgrade. So I had to upgrade that because I was using the LM a lot. But I had to, analyze all these things, all the emails, the data, what's worked year over year, the registration patterns, the time of day, and like when do people buy a ticket to SaaStr Annual? When do people buy a sponsorship? All plus all of our recent agent interactions. I shouldn't say all. I put some of the recent agent interactions in there so we could see how agents and people were interacting with SaaStr. I felt like that was an important context to give it as our AI VP of marketing. And then, I told it to give me an analysis of, the next 6 months, give me a roadmap of everything we should be doing. And I said, give me high level and then give me full details. And I'll show you that in the next slide. I was like, I need every single marketing initiative at, again, a high level and then actual daily executable tasks. And I told it to give me that, right? I think this is super important so that you don't just get a bunch of like generic strategy ideas. I told it I wanted executable tasks. I wanted them grounded in the data. And I wanted it to be easy enough to follow so that the humans here, the 3+1 dog, could still execute it. And so that's where, again, I think a lot of this just was a culmination of our using agents, and I kind of knew what I wanted, and I knew what context to give it, I knew what data to give it. I don't recommend just building your own AI VPM today. Do other agents first. But it's interesting because a lot of stuff I was doing, it said to blow up or abandon, and then some stuff it said to bring back. And then there was a bunch of new stuff it told me to do. So again, since it was based in data, I'm trusting it on what to do and how to run these campaigns. And so you'll see here, this is kind of, again, you'll see at a high level, it's giving me a week over week game plan for cumulative tickets. So this is important. And I told it this would be cumulative to everything else we're already doing at SaaStr, but just give me cumulative ideas of what we can do to, get, maybe instead of 10,000, we have 12,000 or 15,000 people at SaaStr. Like, just get me a cumulative ideas to get, a couple thousand more folks to SaaStr. And so this was the game plan it came up with. You can see, in the early weeks, it's like, okay, you can do some early bird stuff. In January, you can do some alumni stuff. And then when you click each of these, it has literally what you should be doing. The emails, it knows I'm using an AI SDR. It knows some of our AIS. Like, again, I gave a context from our agents. It said, this is what to do with Qualified. This is what to do with Artisan. This is what to do with Agentforce. This is what to tell Jason to do to post on his social media. It literally gave me all these things. It told me how much to spend on LinkedIn ads. What the LinkedIn ads should be. Like, it is that granular level of, yeah, you can see it on the left, it's high level, but then it's also super granular. And so I think this is where it's been a important like back and forth between us of just seeing, what works and what can be done on an AI SDR. And so I know we're running out of time because there's another session starting, which is a few last points. Second. Okay. I think it's important too of like what, 10K, as we nickname him, can do a lot. There are some things though it can't do, right? So like, because I built this as an internal agent, sorry, one second. Because I built this as an internal agent, today, I don't have it hooked up to these tools directly, right? Now you can imagine a world maybe in the late half of 2026 where you're like, okay, AI VPM is connected either via Zapier or something else to, LinkedIn, and it can start to draft the ads for you, or it can start to, draft like the email copy for you. Like today, it still is not doing that level of augmentation and automation. Like, it's coming up with the ideas and it's tracking, it's tracking daily. Like I literally talk to 10K every day of like, hey, where are we at today? What should we be doing today? Where are we maybe falling behind? Because I'm a human and I'm running out of time. And so again, it's not running all of our campaigns for us. We're still doing that ourselves. But again, it gave us really good data on what to do every day. It keeps us focused, right? The other thing I'll say is like it's not always right or wrong. Like I literally challenge it on some things where it was like, oh, I think you should run this campaign. That was like, for example, it gave me a campaign to run for January end of month. I was like, I don't really like that one. Like, it's not very urgent. Like to me, I would not click on that campaign. So why would other people? And so I kind of challenged our AI VPM on doing something else for this week. And then it agreed. It like looked at the data, it looked at my points, and it was like, no, you're right. We should change it. So it's not always right, but it's not always wrong, right? I think it's a good, again, to have that, whatever you want to call it, human orchestration or human in the loop, to say that it's, to check in with it. It does, I will say the biggest thing 10K has done is one, it's keeping me extremely organized in this one very particular vector, which for me, because I manage so many agents, and I still do a lot of like sales goals, production goals. It does keep me honest on what I should be doing and focusing on each day. So for me, I love that. I don't mind actually that 10K has told me what to do. Like, again, it's become more of a conversation now, but I don't mind that it's come up with like what I should be doing. I'm like, sometimes I'm out of energy. It's like, you tell me based on the data what we should be doing, where we should be doubling down, etc. Sometimes I'm too tired to think about that. So I don't mind that. You might mind that. You might be like, I don't know if I want that, but I don't know. I actually don't mind it because again, it's rooted in data. It keeps me honest, and that's why I tend to like it. Um, well, I mean, Jason, you've seen 10K. You've interacted with it, not as its builder, but as a user.
Um, Listen, we're out of time, right, for the session.
Yeah,
We'll demo this in an AI workshop Wednesday coming up. I think for the future, I think our learning is listen, the AI marketing tools, no matter what vendors say, are not nearly as mature as the sales tools, which are not nearly as mature as coding or support tools, right? They're earlier. So we had to build our whole AI to map out all of our marketing initiatives for the year to hit our goals. And it's not ready yet to automatically integrate with all of the other tools. All the other tools you saw, from Clay to Artisan, it should integrate with all of them natively, one way or the other. It doesn't yet, but that is something I think we will explore as a community and as a group. And I think, to Emilio's point, I think by the second half of the year, this will all work. Like instead of us having to build our own AI VPM and it being siloed, it will all connect. And there won't be any excuses for shooting from the hip in marketing anymore in B2B. Like it will
yeah,
do all the work for you. That's what I'm excited about. So, but we'll share our journey and we'll dig into this. We'll do a whole session on 10K and what works and what doesn't in the coming weeks.
yep. All right, with that, yeah, we'll do a follow-up specifically for this because I know I like breezed through AI SDR stuff and the AI VPM. So we can do a follow-up either we'll do it next Wednesday or the Wednesday after. I'll send you guys an email so we could do a part two. I know we didn't get to all the questions. I'm so sorry. There's a lot of good ones. I will try and answer them. I'm going to save this chat as best I can. I think you can do that in Zoom. But I'm going to save this chat as best I can and answer the questions on the next one as well so that we have all the questions and we can get to them and address them. But yeah, I'll send you guys a follow-up with these slides, recording, and then I'll make sure you guys have it. But for now, there is another session starting on SaaStr AI Day. So go to SaaStrAIDay.com. More on this to come in the coming weeks. We'll touch even more on this. We'll answer our questions. Thanks for joining. Hope this was helpful. And we will see you guys. I'm literally going to the next session. So I'll see you in the next session.
Thank you, Amelia.